Okay. So where yesterday we finished the specifics on how a muscle contracts. We talked about the actin, the myosin, formation of the cross bridges, how it starts with calcium and it ends with calcium leaving and troponin and tropomyosin going back to the original shape. Then we got into the divisions of muscles. And we talked about oxidative fibers, and we talked about glycolytic fibers. I said that oxidative fibers, they're good for like endurance type activities, and then glycolytic are like fast and quick to react, but quick to fatigue as well. So this slide is a continuation of where we finished yesterday. So we were talking about the fibers. Remember also that the oxidative were your dark meats, and the glycolytic were your light meats. So when you have like a light or a white meat, that's the glycolytic. Those are muscles with glycolytic fibers. And those with the dark meats are oxidative. So what this is saying is we now have two types of oxidative fibers. So both of these are in dark meat and one type of glycolytic fiber. Slow oxidative and fast oxidative. What do you think the difference is? One is slow and one is fast. I'm really digging this like straightforward naming system. I'm okay with that. So the slow ones have low rate of myosin activity. So the ATP level, there's still ATP. ATP is there and we're constantly making ATP. It's not like you just have this much ATP. But what's myosin again? It's the thick fibers. It's the one that actually pulls the thin fibers in, the feedy things. So it's saying here we have low rates of myosin ATP hydrolysis. So basically what is that saying? We have, myosin's doing its work, but it's doing it very slowly. And not necessarily very slowly, it's just slow in comparison to fast. We find these slow oxidative fibers in muscles that do repetitive things over and over again. So like muscles in our legs, muscles in our arms, and our hands. So that's all that's saying, is something that can be repeated over and over again with little fatigue. Fast oxidative fibers have higher myosin ATP hydrolysis. So that just means that they contract faster, more rapid. Okay? These are both in dark meat. There's not like a section right here that's only fast and a section over here that's only slow. They're interlaced within each other so that when the slow ones are working, the fast ones can back up and so on. Okay? This is just giving you the difference in them. So I don't want you to think, oh, well, these have to be in my abdominals. And no, like they're everywhere. Okay? Then the last type is fast glycolytic. Fast glycolytic means that it's super fast to react, but because of that, it's super fast to get tired. So it's quick to react and quick to get tired. And again, that's where our white meat is. And white meat is naturally going to be tired quicker because there's lower levels of oxygen. Okay, what does exercise do to your muscle fibers, which is your muscle cells? It doesn't break them. It causes them to increase in size. We call it technically hypertrophy. So they get bigger. Do you make more muscle cells? No. They just increase in size. Okay? Just so any type of exercise can increase the size of those muscle fibers. Now, what happens if you don't exercise or work out those muscle fibers? They decrease in size. And the opposite of hypertrophy is atrophy, which means that it decreases in size. The best example of this, and this isn't like me like trying to be rude or call people up, but if you're familiar with people who are paraplegics, where they're paralyzed from the waist down, what do their legs look like? They're really, really tiny and skinny. And that's because they're not doing any work. And your body says if you don't use it, you lose it. It literally begins to break itself down. It's too much work to keep all this tissue on board if we're not going to use it. So people who are paraplegics, their bones are really thin in their legs, bones are really thin, and the muscles are really small because they're not used at all. Okay? We see the same pattern occur when people have broken limbs and can't use them for like 6 weeks. You take off a cast and you compare it to your healthy, unbroken one, and there's a marked difference in size. One of them has absolutely no muscle mass, and one of them has your normal muscle mass. Your question, sir?
How come whenever, like, we're always told that whenever we work out, it's best to use our muscle really without it?
Okay, so what you're talking about is like if you're doing anaerobic activities, like lifting weights. So what it does is it stretches that muscle, and then creatine comes back and replenishes the muscle, so it helps to repair it and increases the blood flow. So that's what you're talking about. I think what people have in their mind is when you work out, you like rip your muscles apart, and then they need to heal, which is what makes them bigger. And that's not it. Like you're just kind of stretching it out, and the stress on it, we need to increase the blood flow, get some creatine back in there, and it'll be good. Okay? Do what?
Did you just shoot up creatine?
Okay, so you actually make creatine already?
Yeah, you have a lot of creatine in it.
Okay, so we're not talking about taking caffeinated beverages.
Is it just like take shots of creatine and just get bulk like?
Okay, so you already make creatine naturally. All those creatine supplements do. So creatine it phosphorylates ATP. So it takes ADP and turns it into ATP, right? So ultimately what it's working to do is give you more energy so that you can work out more. Creatine phosphate is a coenzyme. Logan, I never know what like your thought process is. Sometimes I think
Like if you don't have a lot of muscle, you can't like run a mile as fast as someone who does have more muscle.
yeah. So
Or as long as someone else.
endurance doesn't necessarily have to go with muscle mass. So a lot of long distance runners are actually very small people, and a lot of people who don't run are. So like Aaron McGinley, I guarantee he doesn't run, right? Okay, he's big and bulky, but I bet he doesn't run a long time. Like he's good on the short, but do you see what I'm talking about? And I apologize, Aaron McGinley, if you ever watch this video, which you probably won't, but if you, I don't think he likes. I don't know what he likes. I just know. Who he is. Okay, rickets. Rickets is where you have abnormally soft bone, and the reason you have abnormally soft bone is because your calcium deposits are crazy low. And usually the reason your calcium deposits are crazy low is because your vitamin D is low. And vitamin D is a vitamin, functions as a coenzyme, and it allows you to absorb calcium from your food. Well, when you have extra calcium, guess where we store it? In our bones, and it helps make our bones nice, healthy, and strong, which we need. But when you don't have that, you have a deficient amount of calcium, your bones are still there, they're just not as rigid, and they don't have all the calcium salts that they need, so they become pretty flexible. This is you trying to support your body weight, so you can still support your body weight, but instead of your bones being nice and rigid, they kind of bow as a result of that. When you finally do get adequate levels of calcium, do your legs straighten out? No. In third period they said, well, what if you do this? What if it happens young enough in life? Can your legs get straightened? You can go through a remodeling process, but it takes a very long, like we're talking like 18 to 24 months of wearing braces and with screws to realign, because you're already supporting body weight. Yes?
How people are bow-legged? Is that the same thing?
Okay, so when you have, so there's a few ways that people could be bow-legged. It could have been that it initially was rickets, like they had it had soft bones early on in life, and they just grew that same way and did nothing to straighten themselves out. Also, you see people who are regularly in a position where they're grabbing something with their legs, like horseback riders, like when they're their bones eventually remodel to that. Like for example, if you're right-handed, your bone mass in your right arm exceeds the bone mass in your left arm just because you repeatedly do that. So we see the same thing in people who do activities over and over again for extended periods, like years at a time. Their bones remodel to that activity. We can tell when people, I don't know if we talked about, I think we did this in anatomy. When you look at a skeleton, you can pretty much figure out what they did for a career, whether it was something physical or sedentary, based on the way that their bones look. If they typed a lot, the tips of their phalanges are flat. So if they were like this for a long time, we also see extra stress marks on their forearm bones, the ulna and radius. So we can analyze that and try to figure out. So it could be that they were just doing some type of activity, horseback riding.
I'm way off.
You should probably not.
Is that like scoliosis?
You go way off. So scoliosis is your vertebral column?
But it's not due to a lack of calcium
No.
causing it to
No, it's
shake.
not due to.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. Hey, but I'm grateful that you realized that you were way off.
I was just trying to connect some dots and the dots working
Yeah.
near each other.
Were they on dots, a different page of the coloring book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So osteoporosis. First of all, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I have osteoporosis," and technically, that's like a very general statement. There's quite a few different ways that osteoporosis kind of manifests itself into individuals. But this is what your bones should look like. We call this weaviness in your bones trabeculae. You should have nice, thick trabecular walls. Right here, you can see that these trabecular walls are thin and some of them are broken and non-existent. These walls become thicker the more salts we put in them, calcium and phosphate salts. So it helps to reinforce and keep our bones strong. Well, remember when you don't have calcium in your diet, where does your body get it from? Your bones. You literally have a hormone called parathyroid hormone that will be released, and it'll tell your bones, let's go, and it'll start pulling the calcium out. As those calcium salts get pulled out, we see our bone structure start to deteriorate. Another way that this is caused and it actually can be treated / prevented, is by doing regular everyday exercise. What? Getting some type of movement in your everyday life. Yes, stairs at this school. They're torturous but meaningful. It's just Guerrero. Oh, I guess. So be grateful for the physical activity we've pushed you into. What else do I need to say on this? Yeah, I've said what I need to say. Any questions on osteoporosis? Okay. Muscular dystrophy. So remember the first part of this section was bones, which is why we did rickets and osteoporosis. Muscular dystrophy deals with the second part, which was muscles. Muscular dystrophy basically says that you have muscles and they start to deteriorate. And normally muscular dystrophy, there are different types of it. One of them is genetic, which means you inherit it from your parents. It's a sex-linked condition. But it doesn't start to show symptoms until later on in life. So you are born, you do your normal, regular, everyday things, and then all of a sudden you notice that you're kind of more clumsy than usual. This could happen when you're 5, 6, or 7, or may not happen until you're like 25 or older. We do notice in younger kids that some of them are toe walkers. So they walk on their toes, and that's usually because their calf muscle begins to shrink. So when that calf muscle begins to shrink, it pulls on their Achilles, so it pulls their heel up, and so they're walking on their toes. So you look for small things in these patients to see, could that perhaps be an indication that you do have muscular dystrophy? We do have plenty of drugs to treat muscular dystrophy now. It is not uncommon for someone to start showing symptoms and we put them on an oral medication and they are fine for it. They still have the condition, but they don't die as fast as they used to. And what our main fear is on people who have muscular dystrophy is because their muscles start to deteriorate. What happens when their diaphragm deteriorates? Or when their heart is no longer strong enough, then they expire. Great question. Can they just work out? You can work out if you have muscular dystrophy to help kind of slow that progression. That's a really good question. This This is not a picture I chose. This is a stock picture from the book.
That's a dog.
Thank you, Logan.
She asked.
That's the opposite.
Yeah.